Hello, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Joshua Sanders, and I work with this amazing person here. Have you stopped and talked to them lately? Because seriously, she is amazing. This is Patrick's Carmen, and she started Kaleidoscope with one thought in mind, creating a safe space for the LGBTQ community. Which is why on the evening of June 30th, I am hosting the very first Q&A trans panel from 6 to 8. Now, you may be thinking, why are you hosting this and not Patrick's Carmen? And that's a great question. And here's why. It is because when I was born Jessica Sanders, and this is what I looked like when I graduated high school. I grew up in a small town in southern Indiana, and I didn't start transitioning until I was in my mid-20s. And I've been on testosterone for 8.5 years now.
This isn't all about you, Josh. I'm just kidding. I'm Pastor Carmen, and here at Kaleidoscope, we are on a trans mission to educate the public about what it's like being trans, the experiences of trans people, and how we can better help and support our trans siblings. We have 8 participants on the panel of various ages, genders, sexualities, and differences. The diversity of this panel is what makes it special and rare. It is the unicorn of trans discussion. This is all going to take place on Thursday, June 30th at 5:30, beginning with Queer Cafe, where you can grab yourself a beverage and a snack while you talk to other attendees and the panelists. The experience will begin at 6 o'clock with the trans panel.
Again, hosted by me, which I am a little nervous, not gonna lie about that, but I'm also so excited.
You'll do great, Josh. Scan the QR code or use the link on the Kaleidoscope Indy Facebook page to reserve or purchase your tickets.
Hope to see you then.
Not the... Am I live? Oh, hello. And welcome to Roberts Park United Methodist Church. This is Kaleidoscope, and welcome to the experience. Usually the experience only lasts about an hour. Tonight we have something very special planned, and so we are going to be talking to all of these panelists for the next 2 hours, because here at Kaleidoscope we are on a trans mission to educate the public and the community about what it's like to be trans and the experiences of our trans siblings. And most of all, we want to know how we can better love and support them. Now, one of the first things that I would like to say on behalf of Kaleidoscope is that many of you here are part of the LGBTQ community. And I would like to acknowledge what a difficult space that this can be for some of you to be in. And I would like to acknowledge that the church has caused you harm. The church has mistreated you, and you do not deserve that. And so on behalf of myself, on behalf of the greater church, on behalf of Kaleidoscope, and on behalf of Roberts Park United Methodist Church, we want to say, we are sorry. And so we are trying to make amends the best we can by letting you know that this is a safe space that we have committed to making for you so that you can experience community and support together. Now, having said all of that, did I ever even say my name? Did I introduce myself? Anybody up there? Nobody was listening. Okay, so since nobody was listening, for you there at home, in case I didn't introduce myself, my name is Pastor Carmen, and not only am I the Mama Bear leader of this little group, but I am also the associate pastor here at Roberts Park United Methodist Church. But this is not about me, this is about them, and our special host, I found him, he was hiding. I would like to introduce you to our host and MC for the evening. His name is Joshua Cody Sanders, and he is my right-hand trans man who does everything that I need him to do. He's also my work husband.
Yes.
Yes. So we have a very close relationship, and I am very excited that he has agreed, even though he's a little nervous, to host this for us. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to him, let him introduce himself and do his thing, and then we will also have an opportunity to take questions from the audience. And if any of you are watching the live stream via YouTube, you are welcome to put your questions in the comment section, and we will share those with the group. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a very confident uh-huh.
Okay. Yes, Pastor Carmen, I'm ready. All right, guys, my name is Josh Sanders, and like Carmen said, I do everything for her. And I enjoy my job, and we actually wouldn't be here without Pastor Carmen. So can we give Pastor Carmen a round of applause, please, for all of her hard work? Thank you very much. All right, and now I'm going to introduce the people of the hour, the amazing panel. We are going to start with my best friend, Mr. Ames.
Hi guys, my name is Ames. I go by he, him pronouns, and I have been on testosterone for 18 months.
Hi, I'm Leanna. I go primarily by she, her pronouns, but I also don't really care. I'm here primarily as the spouse of a trans person, and here's Anthony.
Hello, everybody. I am Anthony. I use he, him pronouns. I am an ordained Quaker minister, and I was on hormone therapy for 7 years before I decided to voluntarily stop taking hormones in 2020.
My name is Kendra Stout. I am a trans woman. I go by she, her. I've been on pronouns forever. I've been on HRT for 2.5 years now.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I go by he, him, and I have been on hormones for 5 years.
Hello, my name is Kiera. I've been on hormones for about 7 years, 6 years current.
I'm Ray, I'm non-binary, my pronouns are they, them, and I do not take hormones.
My name is Jane. My pronouns are she, her, and I've been on hormones for almost 7 years now.
Awesome. Thank you, panelists. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you guys so much for volunteering your time to come here and hang out with me in front of all these people. So, let's begin with Pastor Carmen. I believe you want to say something?
Yes, I have one more thing that I'd like to say, and that is this is a safe and brave space. That means if you cannot say anything nice, don't say anything at all. If you cannot honor proper pronouns, do not say anything at all. I am not shy about asking my muscular partner in the back to walk you out if I need to. So, just saying, I take this job as Mama Bear very, very seriously. If you need a reminder, please read the disclaimer on the front of your program.
Thank you, Mama Bear. All right. Is there anyone who would like to ask the first question? Anyone? Oh, no mic. If you do not ask a question, I will call on you. I was married to a teacher once upon a time. I know how to do this. Oh. Anyway, all right, fine. Pastor Carmen, you ask a question.
You're a dirty dog. You're a dirty dog.
Did I not say I was going to make someone ask a question?
Okay, so what I would like to do is I would like to pose a general question to the panel and then allow anyone who would like to answer, okay? And this is a question that I planned on asking tonight anyway. Now, a lot of times we get labeled, right? We have labels that are put on us. You wear a trans label or a non-binary label or something like that. Now, without having asked you beforehand, I am willing to bet with about 99% certainty that you don't want to be known because you're trans. That is not your identity. That is not who you are. It's just part of who you are. And if I'm wrong about this, you can correct me in your responses. So my question to you is, Who do you want to be known as?
Anyone? I will call on you people too. All right, thank you, Miss Kendra.
Yeah, I'm not nervous on the microphone, so I'll start this off. I want to be known as a happy individual. I want to be known as myself. I want people to know me as who I authentically am. Obviously I can't speak for every trans experience. That's why we've collected several of us to be able to help and do that. I started my transition hoping to God that someday people wouldn't even notice that I'm trans. I started hoping that I could go to the grocery store or a restaurant or be with my family and no one even know that I had, another life before I started my transition. And what you learn, especially when you start taking hormones, is that some things don't really work as fast as you wish that they would. Your hair can only grow so long. Your features can only change so much. And part of that pain that you feel, at least for me, when things didn't work out the way that I wanted to the second I started taking hormones, is that I started to realize that the hormones are nice, they help, but what's more helpful is just being able to be yourself. Be already saying that you're trans, coming out as trans is a lot of the work, but I also, hope still someday that, people don't stare at me weird everywhere I go, but I also don't want to forget that I'm trans. I don't want to disown the trans or even gay community, because that is still a part of me, and this is still my family. So me personally, I will always clock myself, I guess, because I don't mind it. I don't want to live in secrecy in being a trans person.
So for me, being trans is actually one of the most important parts of my identity. I want people to know that I am, and I want people, when they think of me, to be like, oh yeah, my trans friend. Like, I know that some people don't like that, right? But for me, it's really important. Part of that is I like to do education, and I like to help other people in my life, and I've been able to help other people because I've been so open. As my time as a pastor, I'm not a pastor in a church anymore. I do more public ministry, and I work in a different profession now. But my calling and understanding of who I am is, okay, bringing Christianity and transness together and showing that they're not separated, that they go together beautifully and they're very important. And I also want to be known, kind of as she was saying, as, a happy and loving and caring person, and a passionate person, and somebody that has a lot of empathy. And a hope that I always have is that people will know I am a safe person when things are difficult or they're questioning, sexuality, gender identity, needing resources, that they know that because I'm trans, because I'm open about that, because it is the heart of who I am, really, and the heart of who God made me to be, that they know that I'm here for them. And it's been a blessing because I've had so many grandparents and parents come to me for help, and I've had so many younger queer people come and say, hey, Anthony, could I talk to you? And I'm like, absolutely, you can. And to watch the ways that that's changed other people's lives changes mine too. And it's helped me become more comfortable with myself and who I am. And I could never get rid of that trans label because it is such a critical part of who I am as a person.
I'd have to agree with Anthony in a lot of ways. First and foremost, what I want to be known for is being a good parent. I'm there for my kids more than my biological parents ever were for me. So that is first and foremost. But honestly, as a 6'4" trans woman that does enjoy wearing her heels, I'm never going to blend. And I have no intention of it. Being seen as a trans woman, especially in my job in a public library, when kids come in. I have had kids come out to me that can't come out to their parents, whether it's with their pronouns or whether it's just the simple fact that they have a girlfriend and they can't share that girlfriend with their parents because they wouldn't see their daughter the same way. Or I've had aunts come to me and say, my niece is trans and her sister doesn't accept her. How can I help her? So for me, it is important that people see me and that I am there as a resource, as an ally, as an example that we're not all boogeymen lurking in the shadows, trying to steal and manipulate their kids. We're just living our lives, working and doing the best we can to make ends meet. And so for me, it definitely is a huge part of who I am, and I am unabashedly very queer.
Anyone else? Oh, Mr.
wanted to
Ames.
chime in.
In addition to what everyone else said, I think that I am excited to surprise people with my transness. I was born a 6'1", over 300-pound woman. I passed before I ever started testosterone. So eventually I will completely pass. And I want to be the kind and empathetic and compassionate person, and for the transphobe or the bigot or whatever in the crowd to be honestly surprised, like, wow, I would have never guessed that that person was not born a male.
All right. Thank you, panelists. All right. First question out of the way. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question now?
I got another one teed up.
Well, we might have to do that. I don't think anyone. Oh, perfect.
Oh, we have a question. Okay, just for the safety of the panelists and all those that are in attendance, I need you to tell me what your question is before I let you ask it.
Well then, Mama Bear's getting all into it.
Oh, okay. That is an excellent question. And is this too? So please say your name, and if you're addressing all of the panelists or if you're just asking one panelist.
Hi, I'm Charity. I was just wondering, what's kind of the kindest thing that someone has offered to you?
Kindest? Oh, Miss Jane, you're all excited. Here you go, sweetheart.
I am super excited about this because when I first came out, it was very, very scary because I was the first openly transgender children's librarian in the Indianapolis Public Library system. And there was a patron who constantly came in and she only talked to one person all the time. She never wanted to talk to anybody else. And she was there pre-transition and after I transitioned, and about 3 months into transitioning, she came in one day with a bracelet and was like, I was at the shop the other day and I saw this and I immediately thought of you. And that just melted my heart, and it was just like you couldn't, I mean, aside from being asked when my last menstrual was, it's like the best ever.
Very nice. Anyone else?
Oh, we have lots of, we had lots of hands go up here.
Okay, fine. All right, Miss Kendra, go for it.
I would say, like, early transition, the nicest thing that people have done is offered me clothes. Because getting dressed every day didn't used to be very fun. And now I have a lot of clothes to wear, and I have a lot of people who've donated them. And yeah, that's probably some of the nicest things, to be able to finally feel comfortable in clothes every day.
So for me, it was, oh wow, now, it was 7 years ago. I had top surgery, which I had been wanting, since I came out, and it meant a lot to me that my brother and my mom were there for me, because it had been hard for them and for me at the beginning, but they learned and grew with me, and my brother drove me and my mom to and from the hospital, and we stayed with him for a night, and then my mom took care of me as I recovered, and sorry, I get a little emotional about it. But just that, like, my mom, like just knowing how far my mom had come from the beginning of being very unsupportive and angry with me to being there every step of the way for a very vulnerable time in my life. And I'll never forget that.
I may get a little emotional too, and I'm going to call you out, brother.
Me?
I am.
Oh, man.
So Josh mentioned that he's my best friend. I'm his best friend, and he's very much right. And he is the kindest thing that has happened to me since I came out. I don't have a family. My spouse and my sister and my niece that are up there are about it. When I came out, everybody pretty much, they just don't talk to me. So when I met Josh shortly after I came out and started my hormones, we just got really close, and he has been a rock. And going through testosterone, it can be very hard the first couple of years with emotions and feelings and things like that. And he has been the person that has been there for me to lean on. So thank you, and I love you.
Apparently I'm everyone's right-hand trans man. Anyone need a right-hand trans man? Apparently I'm free.
No, you're mine.
All right.
Can't have them.
Yes. Anyone else want to answer? Oh. Here you go, sweetheart.
So the kindest thing that anybody has done for me is got me my first they them pen, which seems like a really kind of silly thing. But ever since then, the kindest thing that people continue to do for me every day is call me by my proper pronouns. As somebody who presents, people look at me and they think that I'm very feminine. And so I get a lot of she's and hers, and it makes it really hard to embrace my femininity and my masculinity when I'm constantly being misgendered. So every single day that I get a they or their or them, it's just one of my happiest days, so.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? No? Okay, next question. Anyone? Anyone?
Oh, got one here in the back.
Perfect.
Just need you to whisper your question to me. Ooh, we have an excellent question. Would you please tell the panelists what your name is and ask your question?
Hi, my name's Anne. I used to work in a call center, and so I was in the habit of saying, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And I was wondering if there's some alternative that could be used.
That is a beautiful question. Thank you so much for asking that. Who would like? Anthony?
You don't use them at all.
Pretty much.
Asking helps. Also, I just want to take a second to, when we talk about using pronouns and whatnot, especially when you're in a situation where you're not face to face with the person, I think that most of us have probably dealt, and it is probably part of the trans experience now, that every time you use a credit card somewhere and you haven't legally changed your name, you're sharing a piece of yourself with those people, and they have the opportunity to be able to see it's a name that you don't even use anymore. And the bars that I've been to where bartenders have, not so much anymore, especially not on Mass Ave here, they'll go by the last name, which is still my last name, but there are some finer dining places that they will teach people, thank you, sir, ma'am, whatever. Definitely, I wouldn't use them, but if you are, ask first. And if you're over the phone, in your situation, ma'am, it's just going to be a hard conversation. And I think that part of the trans experience is hard conversations, especially when you're when you're answering a phone call about, a loan or a payment or something, and, you just kind of woke up, and now you have to address the fact that, you don't go by that name anymore, so please stop calling me that. But your heart's in the right place for asking. Just ma'am and sir, I would just stop.
Anyone else? Oh, Miss Jane?
I also think that it's pretty radical to go against the grain when it comes to the ma'ams and sirs. And when we talk about allies, that's what allyship looks like, is telling your boss, no, I'm not gonna call that person ma'am or sir or whatever you tell me that I need to do. And if they have a problem with that, then this is obviously a HR issue. It's a cultural issue within your company. And you know, if you care about your trans siblings and the LGBTQ community as a whole, you know, you will do what you need to do to fight against that. So it is scary and it does suck, but that's the only way that changes are made, is when people rebel.
First, I want to say thank you for asking that question, because call centers, for I'm sure a lot of us, are a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Because they'll say, like, they may even have your name after legally changed, but they base it on the voice.
Mm-hmm.
And even my wife, who is cis, she gets called sir on the phone. So, first of all, you can just avoid it. If they ask something, you can just, rather than saying yes, sir, you can say, of course, let me look into that. Or, of course, let's find out. You can just avoid pronouns entirely. If you are talking to them and you have their name in their account, address them by their first name. But honestly, we don't use first names in conversations when we're talking directly to each other. So just saying something like, let me find out, or just acknowledging that they talked in some way. There doesn't have to be a yes sir, yes ma'am, or any of that, honestly. It's not necessary.
And if you forget, I mean, Post-it notes are amazing. Put them on your mirror, put them, you know, on your computer desk, put them everywhere. That's a reminder to take those that vocabulary away.
Still, after 8.5 years, I still get called ma'am through drive-thrus, and now it's just annoying because I've been on it for so long. I'm like, look at me, got a beard. I ain't no ma'am.
I work in a call center, and I have for 20 years. I would also just agree with everyone, just drop them. And it's very hard. It's hard even for me, because it's just your first instinct, especially as a customer service representative. You want to be able to take care of the person that you're talking to, and you want them to make them feel valued and like you are listening to them. But you can do that without using any pronouns at all.
Very true. All right.
I'm not going to use the mic, but I will say real quick, I know somebody that just says friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I heard that. Or I say homie, but I don't know if that works.
I would like to ask a quick follow-up question to that. Given the pronoun situation, if you don't know for sure and you were to default to they, them pronouns, would that be offensive to those of you who use she, her, or he, him?
Never. No.
Okay.
I would actually recognize the effort put forth to get something right. Yep.
So there you go. Better to use they, them pronouns than to chance misgendering someone. So I think that's an excellent lesson.
All right.
Do we have, I know this lady with a good question. She's got a couple more questions, but I want to give some other opportunities. Does anybody else have a question before? I'm probably going to ask one more question.
I don't know. I'm going to start
Oh,
calling
we got one back here.
people that I know their names. I'm going to start calling them out.
The people who you know their names?
Yep. Looking at those two right here.
I know
Looking at
most
those
of
two
the
right
names
there.
in here. Oh, okay. Here. All right, I'm going to read the question.
He's saving his voice.
It says, I am aware that people in transition have to undergo a lot of challenges to be medically supported through the process. What was your experience?
All right. Oh, this should take a while. No, I'm just kidding.
I put myself on a waiting list at Eskenazi and waited 18 months. And in that 18 months, I found another doctor on the north side that was able to prescribe my testosterone, but it took me a very long time to get the process started. Once it did get started, though, my insurance covered things pretty quickly. It required a prior authorization that took like 3 days, I think, and I have to do that every 6 months. But I get a 6-month supply every 6 months, obviously. Sorry, I'm nervous. And it's been super easy after the first initial starting of everything.
Hello. So when I first started hormones, I lived in Lafayette, Indiana, which is like an hour away from here, so it's really small. They don't have like a gay community. They don't have anything like this at all. So I started somewhere where they didn't know what to do. My doctor initially, he just gave me the medicine. I told him, hi, I'm trans, and I want to be a girl, and he was just like, okay, and he prescribed me the medicine and just gave it to me. When I moved to Indianapolis, they have like a longer, more stricter database, so I had to go through therapy. I had to be considered mentally disabled to be able to be considered to get a recommendation for my top surgery. I had to basically have a mental disability called gender dysphoria, which is given to any individual in Indiana who is trans. You can file it for a disability. That's how bad it is. So I guess for me, it was an easier start. I was able to get on transitions and start transitioning and get the things I wanted out of it. But in the process, I have that now. Which was really determining for me as a person, just because I've worked with a lot of people in mental health and intellectual disabilities, so I advocate for those people all the time, and I just think that there's a lot of more serious things than labeling trans individuals as disabled just so they can get the help that they need.
And I'm going to piggyback off of that, because even once you get that label, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. If your insurance sucks, like mine, even having those letters and all of that, you'll still get denied, which it's often very frustrating to see the people that deny me rolling down the street during a Pride festival, because I had my diagnosis, I had my paperwork, I filed appeals and all of that, and have still constantly been denied. So for some of us, we transition as far as we feel comfortable. For some of us, we transition as far as we are actually able to, because not all of us have the privilege of being able to necessarily even get the medication, let alone surgeries.
Very true. Oh, we gotta go back down there.
I like most of the people on the panel. I was on a wait list for, it seemed like forever, at Eskenazi. I remember one day in particular that I was just kind of beside myself, because I was like, why you call the gender clinic there and there's not a person. It's, you leave a message, and when it's your time, someone will get back to you. And I just had a day. And it was kind of like a breaking point. I was like, I can't just wait around for these answers. So I actually went all the way to Chicago for my first dose of estrogen. And it was easy. It was free. I made an appointment, and within a week, I was there. But also, I really do want to mention, especially I had top surgery, and Kira is absolutely correct. You go through several psychological evaluations. Not only are they, making sure that you have gender dysphoria, but they are also kind of ableist in the way that they look at it. The notes that they leave are they were dressed appropriately for the weather. Her hair seemed to be fine. It seemed like she had brushed her teeth that day. Things that were they want you to be, and this to me is my interpretation of it, they want you to be crazy, but not too crazy. So it really is so confusing, because I looked at those notes, they're all available. And it was just like weather appropriate, hair, nails, check, makeup, everything. They observed all of that. And yeah, that was kind of shocking to me. But also I want to say that just because you're trans doesn't mean you have to undergo any kind of surgery or even HRT. I know several trans people who just don't want to, especially given our current state in the world and access to healthcare in Indiana, let alone, you know, the whole U.S. Some people have done the research and they're like, you know what, I'm not gonna take the Spiro because in Ireland they don't even prescribe it. You know, people just take estrogen straight up, and you know, so it's different for everybody. Excuse me. And your validation as a trans person is not dependent on whether you take hormones or have surgeries or anything. And I think that that's like the most important part, is that everyone does it for themselves. You go as far as you want to as a person. And that's why you have a panel of, you know, this many people, because our experiences are very similar, but also very different.
So for me, like, I'm definitely amen to all that. I, back when I came out, it was called gender identity disorder. So I came out 10 years ago. And to be able to get hormones and all of that, I had to go to a gender therapist, and there was only one within like 2 hours of where I lived. And so like I would drive an hour to go see her, and I had to go every single week, and you had to prove as much as you could that you were as trans as humanly possible, and you had to be as masculine as possible if you're a trans man, as feminine as possible to be a trans woman. Otherwise, the gender therapist did not believe you. And it was so aggravating. And, you know, it was, several months of that. And then finally she was like, well, before I will give you a letter to start testosterone, you need to get your name changed first, because that proves to me that you're serious. And it's like, well, I wanted that changed, but that's hundreds of dollars to get your name changed and all that shit. And those steps I had to go through, and all the money to go to a therapist to get a testosterone letter at that time, and that only like 3 doctors would even see me at all. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of us. A lot of doctors will not see us, do not see us as valid, treat us terribly. And so just all those games to get what I needed. And even getting the testosterone prescriptions was difficult. My doctor did not trust me to do it by myself, so I had to drive an hour to my doctor to get a shot every 2 weeks for several years, because, well, that's just how it's got to be. And then when I was able to do it on my own, I'd get pharmacists who treated me terribly because I was on it. And, you know, that was the whole thing. And when I had top surgery, it was like in Michigan, that's where I'm from, that's where my stuff all happened. U of M has a gender clinic, but in order to get there, you had to go see this very expensive therapist to go make sure that, well, are you, have a mental illness enough, but are you not too far, and you gotta like play it up, like to the point of it being ridiculous sometimes, of like you have to play it up as humanly possible to get what you want, because if it even looks to them like you're on the fence, you ain't getting what you want. And it was so frustrating, because it's like, I know who I am, we know who we are, and we don't need all of these restrictions, but they make it hard on purpose. And, it was a humiliating experience for a lot of it for me. And I'm thankful that I'm no longer in that part of my transition in my life.
I'm so glad I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I'm so glad that I transitioned earlier than, or I don't know how I'm supposed to say this. That's fine, I'm just gonna talk. So I started transitioning 8.5 years ago, and all of the stuff that you guys went through, I didn't have to go through it. I had to go I drove 45 minutes to a therapist in Evansville, because I'm from Vincennes, Indiana. And I walked in my first day, and I said, hey, I'm trans. And she's like, all right. She's like, well, You need to see me 3 times before I can give you a letter. And I said, okay. And so that first hour, she just got to know me. The second time I came, we wrote the letter together. And the third time I came, she printed it off and gave it to me. And then I couldn't find a doctor in Vincennes to give me testosterone, so then I had to drive to Terre Haute, which is a half hour or an hour north. And it was a endocrinologist, right? Because with testosterone, they worry about your insulin and your liver and all that fun crap. So I went there for a few years, and they wanted me to drive there every 2 weeks. But thankfully, I'm a psychiatric nurse tech. I do this for a living, so no. And then I went to a pharmacy, and they gave me an empty vial of testosterone, and they didn't believe me. I'm like, no? All right.
Alrighty then. Well, all I wanted to say is just that I'm sorry. Like, I knew about gender dysphoria. I understand what gender dysphoria is. I had no idea that it had been classified as a mental illness. Yeah. And that is horrific to me, because they've done the same thing now to the trans community that they did to the homosexual community back all those years ago when that was a mental disorder. But technically, heterosexuality was the first mental disorder. You can ask me later if you want.
And I suppose that gender dysphoria sounds a little bit better than gender identity disorder from back when I came out. Like, 'cause that's like,
I'm not having an, I know who I am.
I know who the hell I am. Like, you can.
Yeah, right?
When I started taking gender dysphoria, I'm like, this is still stupid. But I was like, this is better than what I had before. So I was like, this still sucks, and it's still wrong, and it's still stupid, and it's ridiculous. But it doesn't sound as bad as what I had to do.
Yes. I didn't have issues with starting testosterone, but since I have started and I've been in transition, I've had a lot of medical issues with doctors. I had a doctor once, I was in the ER with ended up being my gallbladder. It took 10 years to figure out what my gallbladder issue was. Anyways, I went to the ER, and we were sitting there, and the doctor came in, and he assumed I was cis, male, because that's what my everything says. He came in and started pressing on me, talking about whatever, and I said, what did he say? He said something about like a UTI or something like that, and I said, well, I'm trans, female to male trans. He literally put his hands up and walked backwards to the corner of the room and just stood like this and just stood 5 feet away and talked to me and Leanna. And we were livid.
And at that point, it was,
You're good.
And then at that point, it was a required pregnancy test.
Always required
And
pregnancy
then it
test.
was diagnosed as a UTI.
Yes.
So.
Anytime
it
there's
stinks.
ever anything wrong abdominally, maybe the trans guys up here can get it, they just assume it's your ovaries.
Yep.
That's all I did, they just assume it's your ovaries. And my gallbladder was actually losing function. And they just kept saying it was my ovaries. And I ended up having to get it taken out.
I have also had to go through a pregnancy test for anything and everything I have had to do in the hospital probably the last 5 years. Even though I've been on testosterone for a year and a half, I have a full beard. I don't menstruate anymore. I explain this to them, and they still require a pregnancy test.
Yep, every time. Which is annoying and embarrassing, but that's fine.
All right, we have another question from the audience, and I trust this person, so I'm not even going to ask them to tell me their question.
I don't trust Casper.
Oh, it's just I'm having trouble hearing. Can you please speak up just a bit? Thank you.
Oh, all right,
We're
there you
just
go.
gonna scream at Casper.
Another person that I trust.
I think part of the problem is this room so reflective. But I noticed the people who hold the mic a little closer to their mouth are easier to understand.
Okay. She said put the mic closer to your mouth to talk like this.
There wasn't a question, it was just people were having a hard time hearing. Would you
Any
just
other
go ahead and ask your next question? Okay.
Coming to you next.
Okay, let me ask them a question and then you can tell me. Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then she and I are going to have a conversation to make sure that we want to be respectful and make sure the way we ask the question is respectful. And I'm glad that Leanna, I was coming to you next because you haven't had an opportunity to share yet. Don't worry, Taylor, I got my eye on you too. But what you are up here representing someone who is married to a trans spouse or has a trans spouse. I wasn't going to out you, but you kind of just outed yourselves. So,
Do I know you? Yeah.
so this is my question to you. Being married to a trans man, what sort of issues, problems within society, what kind of pressures, what's that like?
Great question.
As someone who presents and looks like a cishet female, who looks like they're with a cishet male, and so you look like the typical normal. Normal, yes. Sorry, I forgot my air quotes. Normal.
I can promise you there's nothing normal about me and Leanna.
There is, I second that. I know there's nothing normal about you, but I want you, I would like you to
Anyways.
share.
Good grief. Yeah, so Josh and I have been together for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years this fall. And so he and I were together when he was going through the coming out process as a trans guy. And so, he began hormones a good 6 months into our relationship.
We started dating in November. I started hormones in February.
Okay, but you always say we start dating in September, so.
No, we met. Oh, wait.
Anyways,
No, November 9th. That's when we started dating, November 9th. And I started testosterone February 21st. I promise you.
Oh, I believe you.
Okay.
He's the date guy. Yeah, and so during that early time period, I was going through a lot, and I really liked having my hair cut short. I liked presenting a bit more masculine, and at that time, prior to his coming out as trans, we were just two women who were dating each other.
We were a lesbian couple.
And so there's definitely social stigma around that. And then when the transition part started, it became, I felt a lot of pressure to present more feminine as a way to support his masculinity because,
No, you keep going. I'm good.
Okay.
You're good.
Because it was really important in, when we traveled to southern Indiana, when we were walking around Vincennes, when we were out in public. I was in Charleston, Illinois at the time, and there's a lot of rural, a lot of still, impeach Obama signs between Vincennes and Charleston. So there was a lot of places where it felt really unsafe to be looking like a queer couple, not just a same-sex couple, but someone who was, I don't know, some kind of queer. And so, so that was really important at the beginning to make it seem like we were a het cis couple. And I remember one of the first times he and I went out to lunch or dinner or something, and the waiter gave him the check. That felt like a win. As sexist as that is, that meant that we had passed, that we were a man and woman out to dinner, and the man was picking up the check. And so, as we have both grown more comfortable in our identities, there has been some room for, gender presentation, experimentation, cutting my hair short again.
Shaving your head.
Yeah, that was because I lost a bet, not because of gender. But, and being more comfortable being publicly queer, in a relatively cis-passing heteronormative relationship, if I come out as queer, people are like, yeah, are you really? You're with a guy. And so, being comfortable in that identity without outing him has also been a development of sorts.
But now that I'm a Carmen's right-hand trans man, I think everyone's going to know that I'm trans now, so you don't have to worry about it. Does
Very
anyone
true.
Are you done?
Oh, I just said very true.
Oh, that's true. Does anyone else have a cis-het relationship from the outside that would like to talk about it? Looks more like a cisgendered relationship, like man-woman. All right, perfect. Karen, would you like to say something about it? because I'm still waiting for Carmen, and so now I'm actually the host by myself now. So this is terrifying. So we're just going to have you guys keep talking.
Okay, so can you hear me? Okay, cool. So my experience is a little different than theirs. It's still really scary, but the scary part is more so for me individually, and then for my boyfriend individually. My boyfriend individually he's like he, him. He would walk in here and you would not think that he dated trans women. He would not indulge in the LGBTQ at all. So I'm like the first person he's ever really like considered himself being open and comfortable with. So I've been living my life as a trans woman since 2015. He just started being comfortable with himself like last year, being able to like bring me around his family. When I first met my boyfriend, I used to have to like hide in his closet when his dad would like knock on the door, or like hide like period so nobody knew where I was. I used to have to sneak out of his house just because he wasn't ready to become who he was. I face a little more adversities than they do just because I can agree with you. I'm a 6'3" trans woman. There's no way, no matter how bad I look, no matter how pretty I am, people are gonna know that I'm biologically considered a male. So we face a lot of different adversities because I'm tall. I walk outside, I get a lot of attention. And so he doesn't really absorb it very well because I don't always get like, oh, you're pretty, you're great, yeah. I get a lot of like, oh, that's a man. I have a lot of like women, when I see them in public, they instantly clock my tea, especially in front of, clocking my tea, by the way, is kind of like telling what I am before I share it with the others. So a lot of women, men do it too, but women do it more to me than men. They clock my tea in public settings and social settings. I see it all the time. I'll just be walking in a group, I'll be at the mall and a girl will be like, oh, that's a man. And they don't do it to be mean. Well, they don't do it to be nice, but they don't do it to be mean neither. I think it's a way of them being able to like identify and like notice like, oh, that's a trans woman, but they don't always give it in the best way. So to answer your question, we kind of just, we battle really bad with like being in public because I have very bad social anxiety. I'm a performer, so like when I walk into performing, like I'm a completely different person than I am outside of like my regular life. I'm very like socially anxious. I don't like to talk to people. I have a hard time like communicating. So when we go into settings, he's the same way, and it makes us both very uncomfortable. So a lot of times we sit at home.
I understand. I'm usually uncomfortable in social settings too until Carmen or Leanna make me do it.
We know what's good for you.
Yeah. All right, anyone else? Okay.
Did anyone else want to answer that question though? Am I allowed to, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I want to ask, and I hope this isn't too far, but this just kind of got me thinking about it, and I like to talk with my trans friends about it because I learn from it as well, but how has everyone on this panel dealt with fetishization when you're looking for partners or...
I was saving that till after the break.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, dang it.
Well,
So,
we're going.
But actually, here's my question. I was going to give you a 10-minute break from 6:55 to 7:05, so you could just kind of like get some water, maybe get some more snacks or something. And that is going to be in like 3 minutes. So is this really something that can be answered in 3 minutes?
I can wait, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're going to wait. All right.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a break now. And when we come back, we'll come back and talk about fetishes. Okay?
Great.
If you are joining us online on YouTube, we will be back in 10 minutes. Don't go nowhere. If you are here in the space, we do have door prize entries and drawings. You can fill out a door prize form and I'll draw for a couple of those. Again, if you want to go downstairs, get another water, get a refill on something or more snacks, please feel free to do that. I just want to give our panelists an opportunity to stretch and feel like they're not in the spotlight for a minute.
feet.
Jacob.
Yay, Jacob!
Okay. What size shirt do you wear? Medium? Perfect.
I hope you like that shirt. I designed it myself.
Josh designed it himself. There you go. And put a bumper sticker on your car. There we are. All right. Let's draw another one. I'll do another one at the end of the night, too, but we'll just do a couple right now while we wait on the rest of our panelists to come back up. Olivia Offit. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
And what size t-shirt do you like? Medium. There you go. You're welcome. Oh, here. Put a bumper sticker on your car, too.
All right.
Or stick it on your computer. Okay. Do we have all of our...
No,
we do not have all of our panels.
Ray and Taylor.
Taylor. He knows I'm coming for him.
Oh.
Okay.
Fine. What about Ray?
It's like, you better not run. Better not run, boy. I'll come find you.
She will.
No, we've got the fetish question to start with first.
Great.
All right, and for everybody joining us at home on YouTube, whether you are live streaming us or you are jumping in later, we want to say welcome. We are getting ready to come back from break. We wanted to let everybody stretch a little bit, get a drink of water, because as we come back to this second part, we're talking about fetishes. So I also wanted to give them an opportunity to just collect themselves before they talk about their experiences being fetishized. Is that a word?
Yes.
Okay. So the question posed by Kendra before we went to break, I don't remember exactly what the question was, but the sense of it was that you have issues, trans people have problems with being fetishized when they try to date or find someone to have a relationship with, etc. And so what has your experience been and how have you handled that? Does that sum it up pretty good, Kendra?
All right. Anyone want to ask about fetishes? Not your fetishes, but... Unless you want to talk about your fetishes, I mean, Carmen would be okay with it.
What? Carmen, what?
I said Taylor, I mean, he can either talk about that or talk about his own personal fetishes. I said, I don't think Carmen would care.
I've actually dealt with it more on dating apps.
Talk into the microphone, please.
I'm so loud anyway.
No, you're not.
I've dealt with it more on dating apps where I won't necessarily advertise myself as a trans man originally, and then if I can see the conversation kind of flowing well, getting to a point where I might actually want to meet that person, then I will tell them, and then I'll either have somebody stop talking to me, or I'll have somebody clock me and make some comment about like, oh, I've always wanted to be with a trans man, or like something like that, which is just don't. I've only had it happen like and everybody hides behind the screen, and it's a lot easier to say stupid stuff like that when you're just messaging some random stranger on like Tinder or Grindr or whatever. But I've had it happen one time face to face, and to his credit, he was very intoxicated. And I've had multiple conversations with him while he was sober, and he is not typically this type of personality, but drunken words are sober thoughts. But he did say something basically along the same lines of he has wanted to know that experience. He has no interest in women or the female body, but he has wanted to experience being. How much can I say in this church?
You can say as much this is
not a church setting.
Brave place. There are no rules.
This is
well, except for the ones that are printed on the front of your program.
we up here, we don't have rules.
As long as you're respectful to the rest of your panelists.
He did say that he had wanted to be physically intimate with a trans man, both as a top and a bottom, just to see like what it was like. And I did outright tell him, and he, I'm sure, remembers none of this conversation, but I did tell him, you can't just seek out the nearest trans man and try to hook up with them. Like, most people are going to clock you as a fetishizer before you have even clocked them as a trans person. So, yeah, I haven't really dealt with it much other than that. Like, when it does happen to me, I'm just like, okay, we're done talking now.
Anyone else?
Okay, so I experience fetishes all the time. I hang out with a lot of like cisgendered women, so we go to a lot of like straight cisgendered clubs where I try to like blend in and mingle, which I'm not gonna ever blend in and mingle because I'm tall as hell. So everybody a lot of men, they fetishize about being in a relationship with a trans woman, whether it's sexually, emotionally, mentally. They have certain specific innuendos, kind of like he said, wanting to be like a bottom or a top in a sexual situation with a trans person just to see if it's something that they consider that they like or they don't. Me personally, I love being a trans woman, so I live my life always saying I'm a trans girl. So I'm always open to giving somebody an experience, but at the same time, did you slap? I'm always open to giving somebody an experience just because I feel like as trans individuals, we all deal with people being a fetish over us or like being a chaser over like a specific type of like trans individual. It's just kind of a respect thing. Don't come to me and then come to Kendra and then come to her and then come to Ray and you want to experience the trans experience with all of us. If I'm going to be your first experience, sure, like I'll make sure, we have fun. Like I give you like a great experience, but at the same time, having people fetishize over you, sometimes it's funny, but sometimes like it is like dangerous. You have a lot of people who try to like fetishize over you in a way that makes you very uncomfortable. They say things that could make you potentially in harm's way. So you just have to be very careful. You have to scan people who you conversate with, especially when you are a trans individual, because you never know if they're trying to get to know you for actually who you are, or get to know you just off of the strength that you're trans and you have both things to offer.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
So I get it for actually a number of reasons. One being trans, but I also get the librarian one. So there's that sexy librarian kind of thing going on, and I'm like, okay, it is a trope, but it is true. Nice. I know a lot of really sexy librarians, so it's kind of hard to argue that one. But yes, there are definitely lots of chasers, and it's always kind of like, I have been in conversations with people and been talking to them, and I'm open to relationships. I'm poly as well, so like if somebody approaches me and we click and everything else like that, then that could be a potential partner or friend or whatever kind of thing. So I never always just shoot folks down and like, oh, I'm married, period, kind of thing. So it leaves me open a lot of times for like having actual conversations with people and engaging them, and then it's almost immediately like if they haven't already picked up on the fact that I'm trans, I do let them know. It is always flattering when they don't pick up right away. But then almost immediately as soon as they do know, the conversation shifts. Mm-hmm. And because of my height, because of my demeanor, I'm often like thought of as being a dom. And it's like, oh, you can dom me. And it's like, no, I can't and I won't. It's like that's a whole other set of fetishes, and we're not going to get into that because I already know where you're going with this. So it can be funny at times, and you can kind of have fun with it when it's online. Mm-hmm. When it's in person, it's an entirely different thing, and I have actually had people say things to me on the street. They see me and they immediately think that I'm a sex worker, and I know sex workers and I have nothing against them, but I am not one, and I feel for them for what they have to hear a lot of times, because I hear it, because they just assume. They assume that anybody that's trans is a guy in a dress or something along those lines, and so automatically therefore a sex worker. I have had somebody try to drag me into an alley because they always wanted to be with a girl like me. It is extremely dangerous, and the fetishizing can cross lines in ways that it was already crossing lines, but it can get into like serious dangerous red zones super quick.
So to kind of piggyback off of like what she was saying with sex work, I have engaged in sex work before. It was something I did a lot of in the early stages of my transition. I used it kind of to monetarily tell myself that I'm doing good being a trans woman, you know, like, but one thing I think it's like really important to mention is there are still gay panic laws that are intact in a lot of America. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically you can hook up with a person and they can kill you because they have post-nut clarity, I guess. And they take their anger and frustration out on you, you die. And the law approves of it because they can say that they either didn't know that you were trans and, you know, this person lied to me, or the court oftentimes sees us as people who are coercing people into sexual acts. A lot of us get pegged as rapists and sexual abusers because so often our stories get told after we're already dead, and there's no way for us to defend ourselves in that moment. So men, and you know, I haven't seen any cases with women, but I know men specifically will take the lives of a lot of trans women who do engage in sex work. And, you know, it's a hard industry to be in. The good times are fleeting because it's often really good until you're left alone with yourself to kind of think about it. And more than one instances I've been in, I've been held up to finish having sex with someone. And, you know, being assaulted by a man that you invited over to make some money off of doesn't really hold up in court. So, yeah.
I would also like to add that Indiana is one of those states that does have a gay panic law on the books. And so just as Kendra was sharing, I mean, all it takes is them crying self-defense most of the time, and that justifies their killing of an LGBTQ member of the community. It doesn't just have to be a trans person, it can be anyone that is a member of the LGBTQ community. So I'd like to talk real quick. Yeah. I don't want to cut anybody off.
Thanks. I'll share a different perspective. So, like, trans men do get fetishized. Yeah, it happens, you know. I run into the opposite problem of, like, dating is, like, impossible. Because, I'm out about it, obviously. But sometimes people don't pay attention to that, and I'm gay. So maybe it has something to do with it. I don't know. But somebody will talk to me, and then they'll look at it and say, oh, well, I've just been looking for friends, and it immediately changes to, well, I just want friends. And I'm like, why are you on Grindr, honey? You're not here for friends. Or, any of the dating things for that matter. Like, you're not on there to make friends. Like, and if you are, chill. Okay, but that's not what they're for. And, the unfortunate thing, too, is not all people who have a fetish or a curiosity come out about it until after you've slept with them and dated them. Like, I had 2 people in my life that, I dated and then finally slept with, and they're like, well, actually, realize I'm not really into trans men, so they would dump me. And so, dating, I haven't tried in years because of that. And men, specifically cisgender men, are very fucking scary.
Preach.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead. No, not at all.
You're great. Keep going.
This is your floor. This is your forum.
So to piggyback off of what you said and what Kendra said, I was not even going to share this, but I'll just share it because it is what it is. I've done sex work for about 5 years. I have been kidnapped. I've been raped. I've been held at my own will. I've been held to gunpoint. All these things are not because I'm just trans. These things are because I'm a Black trans individual in Indiana, and things like that for us are not looked at as important. When you look up Black trans women in the United States, we're 1 in 4. 1 in 4 of all of us are not going to make it until we're 35 years old. Okay, a lot of us have to struggle. When I moved out here last year, when I was in, December, I was homeless. I was sleeping out of my car. I was doing shows, selling my body for money, doing what I felt like I needed to do to give myself a better platform. Because I've sold sex before, which I'm gonna piggyback off of his, I was in a relationship with somebody who I was gonna get married to about 7 years ago, and he used to be physically abusive to me, and he used to beat me up, take all of my stuff. He's the person who actually got me into prostitution. And so because of a lot of the things that I faced being a trans woman through that relationship, I have a hard time, like you, being able to be in relationships with men, because when I see men now, I consider them like a fetish, or like a chaser, somebody who's gonna get with me under the impression of wanting to have sex or wanting to get to know me, and then once they get what they want from me, they're gonna treat me any type of way that I want to. Well, they want to, and I have to deal with it because I'm keeping their secret. I'm keeping them comfortable. I'm making sure that nobody knows their secret. But at the same time, I'm in risk of danger. So.
I'm glad you brought up secret, because that was something else that I had wanted to say, was that, and especially early on when you're transitioning, and the first time somebody shows attraction to you, and it is, well, at least for me, it was somebody of the opposite sex, and it was they see me as a woman. They see me as myself, and they're actually attracted to me, and you it's easy to fall for the show and to be blind to the red flags, and then you can very quickly become their dirty little secret. They don't want anybody to know about you. They don't want any of their friends to ever see them with you, things like that. It is so easy because we're so desperately trying to be ourselves and be seen as ourselves that we will fall for the lies when somebody says that they see us as that way.
And just real quick, we're talking about some really, really heavy stuff, so I just want to tell everybody on the panel that I really hope that today you go home and you take care of yourselves, and you do something that's going to make you happy and make you feel good about yourselves and about being here. So I'm getting definitely emotional hearing everybody's stories. So please, please, please take care of yourself.
Yes, please do. I plan on playing Big Harry Potter later, probably.
Yeah, I just want to say, we're not done yet, but thank you so much for your honesty and your vulnerability. It is really amazing and inspiring. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I have,
Okay, so let's focus down here.
Okay, so we'll focus down here a little
We're going
bit.
to focus on Leanna. Yes, you
Leanna?
have something to say? Go ahead, sweetheart. Baby, love you. Love you. I'm just going to sit here and let you talk. Do it.
Okay, I have a question. I will ask a question. This came, oh, do you have a question, Howard? Oh, she did? Well, the question I was going to ask wasn't related. So we can jump all over the place. That's okay. There you go.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Yes.
Okay. Did any? What?
I want you to hold it closer to your mouth. There.
All right. Did any of you know each other before this panel?
Yes, I've known that one for about 10 years, and I've known that one for 2.5 years. No, I don't think so. I think most of us
talking about
all,
the rest of them.
yeah, we all kind of got together. Pastor Carmen messaged all of us. Yeah.
So,
I don't know any of these people. I wasn't a part of it.
well, the question is how do people get involved with the groups?
Carmen?
If you're all, well, it's one group. I've been a member of other groups, and they're
well-
all very small, very segmented. There's no one place I found that can be more universal. So how do people get support? Everyone looking for it, but where do you get it?
Well, I know that's one of the things that we're trying to do with Kaleidoscope is to make sure that people have a big support system, which is why we brought the panel out here to try to start that conversation. Well, those two are, but yes. However, all of these people up here, we all know each other through Carmen, because Carmen is very social and likes to go out and about and talk to people and meet people. I don't know if you know that about Miss Carmen, but that is how we all came to be on this panel together. Go ahead, Mr. Jane.
I actually came to be on this panel because I saw a post on Facebook through Queering Indy in regards to this panel looking for people to hear our stories.
Right.
And so that is how I then reached. So as far as for groups and where people can go, as much as I might despise the Book of Faces sometimes, it can be a really good gathering spot for reaching out to other queer folks in the community across the entire rainbow spectrum, regardless of where you fall in it. There are specific groups where you can meet folks, and then a lot of times those groups have meetups or things like that. There's Trans Indy, which is a local group that is a peer-led support group. There's all sorts of small little pockets scattered throughout. And that's where kind of the hope is to eventually, at least as a board member of Indy Pride, is to try and make those groups known and give them a platform so that people can find them when they do move here. Because I have had people come into the library and say, I'm new here, where can I go to be part of, a gay support group or a trans support group? Because for some reason they just come up to me and ask these things, and I'm not sure why. It might be the rainbow lanyard, it could be all the rainbows that I've set up in our library, but they're all over the place, and we're trying to bring them together, and things like this help to do that and to spread the word of where those are. And it's becoming a little bit easier in some ways, because it used to be that churches weren't the place. So places like this, churches like this, are definitely a great spot to start finding those, especially if you are a queer person of faith. And if you're not, then there's other ones that you can find, or you can at least come to one that's welcoming and then find another spot from there.
I know I follow like 5 or 6 F2M groups on Facebook alone, and that's actually how me and Ames met, through one of those F2M groups. And so I just put in there, I think I put some like, any trans guys in Indianapolis want to hang out, I'm free. And he's like, hey, I live near you. So that's kind of how that started.
And I would just also like to add for clarification, especially for those of you who are watching through YouTube, Kaleidoscope does meet here at Roberts Park. It is supported by Roberts Park United Methodist Church, but we are an interfaith group. So we are not here see, I can't even say the word, so we can't do it. So everyone is welcome here, and as I like to say, we are very fluid and we swim in the rainbow.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything? Okay.
Okay.
Next. Oh, Miss Riley.
Oh, you got a question? Oh, I got way too much to say for you to say. Oh, wait.
Ow, table. Sorry.
So you guys started to touch on this a little bit when you discussed your transitions and your experiences with getting psych evals and stuff like that, and just being pathologized. But I was just curious if any of you have sought any help with mental health, therapy, or counseling or anything like that. What have your experiences with that been like? Because yeah, I hope that they've been okay, but yeah.
For me, I have been in therapy for the last 2 years since my grandma passed away, and my therapist is absolutely phenomenal. But before that, I had 2 other therapists who weren't phenomenal, and I've had to switch a lot because then I only feel comfortable going to women therapists personally, just because of my history. So, who would like to answer therapy? Oh. It was.
What she was wondering is, since you had to go through the initial process of the diagnosis in order to get the process going, she was wondering if any of you continue to see a therapist and if that has been a positive experience for you, or if receiving the mental health care you need has been a negative experience or been difficult.
My therapist is actually amazing.
Just go down the line. Yeah, we're just going to go down the line.
Okay, I'm good with that.
We're all big fans of therapy here.
My therapist is amazing. I have been seeing her since before I came out and before I started transitioning. She's actually the one that found my doctor that gave me the medicine that I needed. She pointed me in the right direction. She has been just awesome through everything. She helps my spouse and I together and me on my own. And I'm very, very lucky and fortunate that the first person that I clicked with was as amazing as she is and is also part of the community.
Yeah, so one of my first experiences in therapy when I was out was after I was assaulted by a trans guy, not my husband. Just needed to clarify that. And the therapist claimed that it couldn't have been rape because that he didn't have whatever. And so that was really damaging. And I didn't seek therapy for another 5, 7 something years, 6 years
4
maybe.
or 5 years, yeah.
And then once I did, I needed to make sure, like, you know, do they say that they're LGBTQ affirming, you know, walk in just straight up being like, hey, I'm all kinds of queer. Is that, you know, like, and judging those reactions. At that point, I had gotten pretty okay at judging reactions. So once you find somebody that you click with, it can be good, but there are a lot of very uninformed folks out there.
Very true.
So this one is especially difficult. So I like to go to Christian counseling because often when I talk about my issues, Jesus comes up, metaphors from Scripture come up, you know, and talking Jesus tends to help me a ton. Right? He's like my best friend. And so let's be real here, Christian therapists and queer people pretty much, except for like this much, don't mix. And so I've had to go to secular therapists who could not understand what I was trying to say half the time, or they weren't queer. So like they would say, well, is it all because you're trans? I'm like, no, it's not. It's other stuff. And I ended up saying to every single one of my therapists, I'm trans and you don't get to ask me about it unless I talk about it. So I set a very firm boundary because I'm like, you're not going to blame any of my issues on this unless I do. But I was fortunate. So Christian Theological Seminary, where Carmen graduated from, has a counseling program. And they're a progressive seminary. They're good folks. And I was able to find a therapist who is both very left, very progressive, and very Christian, and very accepting as I explore my sexuality and things like that, and very glad I got a good one. But I get the best of both worlds, which is very rare for queer Christian, especially a trans Christian, to find a therapist that would actually do, you know, good and not tremendous amounts of harm.
My relationship with therapy is not very extensive at all. I have talked to, obviously, to be able to get a little bit of the medical transition that I would like. I've spoken to therapists, psychiatrists. When I shared stories about sex work, I spoke to social workers. And those people have helped a little bit, or they've always been ready to give the resources. One behavioral specialist that I've met with a couple times, it was good and then it wasn't, but I and my poor friends, I rely almost a lot on my friends. In especially the trans community, we, you know, as Kira shared, a lot of us get kicked out from home. We don't have family anymore, and RuPaul says it all the time. And you know, us as gay people, we gotta pick our family, and those people are just as valuable as blood relatives. And you know, I am a drag performer, so we call it a house, if you will, but it's really a collective of people who are all like-minded. We all share experiences, and I know that any day of the week, at any time, I can go to my drag house's group chat and basically start a conversation with anyone who's available at any time. And it could be about emotional support. It could be about a bad hookup. It could be about, you know, relationship drama, and, you know, raised in the same house, and they know. Sometimes it's about, you know, trying to find a car, or trying to find a place to live, or trying to, you know, help our partners find a job, or, you know. So I lean on that family aspect to me. That's most of my therapy.
So I actually got really lucky. When I was first searching for a therapist, it was actually partly for ADHD and anxiety brought on depression and stress. And then also because I knew I was wanting and needing to start hormones very soon. So my first appointment with her, I actually looked through my insurance at the time, specifically for ADHD, and then also I was looking for something that referenced LGBTQ, or specifically trans or gender dysphoria. And the one that I found, I've now been seeing for 7 years. I was going to her for about 2 years before I finally decided to actually start T. She asked me if I still needed the recommendation letter or not. Neither of us really knew, so she wrote one anyway. I did the same thing to find my endocrinologist, and through my insurance, I called to make an appointment, got my T ordered a week later, and started T a week after that. So my therapist now, at this point, we both know each other so well that I do a 40-minute appointment every 2 months, and we'll spend the first 20 minutes or so doing a check through, you know, how are you feeling, how's work, how's your relationship, how's your like home life and all that, and then we spend 20 minutes talking about like Harry Potter or Batman or like just something random, and it's you still get that massive weight lifted off after each conversation, just because not only do I know she isn't allowed to judge me, technically. But also, I truly feel that she wouldn't. She has divulged more in me during our session, or about her family to me during our sessions, just as much as I have told her. I know her two daughters' majors and what they're interested in, and like, so it's talking to a friend with the extra layer of, I know for a fact nothing I say in here is gonna be something that she like throws back in my face or turns negative. She's going to do what I do with all of my friends basically, and spin the situation and say, okay, well, if that was something that bothered you, then how else can you look at it, or something like that. But I mean, I love her. She's not actually covered by my insurance, and it's a very expensive appointment every other month, but it is for me, just because it takes me a while to build a rapport like that with somebody. It has definitely been something that I do look forward to every 2 months and feel a hell of a lot better afterwards.
I actually do not see any therapist or conversate with anybody. I know I probably should, but I don't. I'm kind of like Kendra. I talk to a lot of my friends and my family about a lot of stuff that I have going on in my life. Sometimes I find myself being that person that actually gives them the good advice and like sends them on their way, but like I never really get what I want to say off my chest. I'm very private, like with like the things that I hold dearly to my heart, especially like my transition, like anything that has to do with like my growth as a person. Like I'm very private with it, and like I just haven't found somebody kind of like him who he feels very comfortable like talking to and like is very accepting of them. I haven't found somebody who I feel comfortable enough to like open up with. So yeah.
So I used to be in a heteronormative relationship. Excuse me. And I was seeing a therapist, and sorry. As soon as I started to come out and ended my relationship with the man who was very abusive, my therapist actually stopped seeing me. And that was really hurtful. So that was one of my last suicide attempts, was after I stopped seeing that therapist. And so I've had in my life a big distrust of just therapy in general. So I stopped for a while, and I can tell that it was a huge detriment to my mental health, so I had to start again. So I just recently started therapy again, and it has been slow going because, like Kira, I have a lot of things that I just keep close to myself, and so it's very hard for therapists to have the patience to kind of, be consistent with me because I'm not an open book with them, and, that's just my experience. But I have started seeing somebody, and she seems to be fantastic, and we seem to really be making a connection, but who knows?
I have a very long history with therapy. I saw a therapist when I was very little, but even though I knew when I was very little that I was a girl, there weren't the words for it, and also it wasn't necessarily my idea to go. There was just a lot of things going on in our family, and so it was, they should probably see a therapist. And so I went to like a child's therapist, which of course then they share everything. So there wasn't that trust. And so I basically, at a very, very early age, learned to, one, not trust the therapist, and two, learned how to play their game as I saw it. And it wasn't until I came out to my family that I then sought out a therapist. Fantastic, absolutely amazing, loved her to death. It was also shortly after a death in the family. There was a lot of things really to unpack other than just my gender. And I found them to be really incredible. And then I found out that they weren't in my network. And my insurance paid like $5 of the therapy session. And I couldn't afford to see her anymore. So trying to find somebody in network that understands the trans experience, that I don't have to spend like the first 5, 6 sessions paying them so that I can educate them about me and just this aspect of my life. It's something that I know I could definitely benefit from, especially after finally having one in my life as an adult that I could trust, I could open up to, and that I could find that comfort level with and not play the game, but actually get what I needed from it. It's unfortunate that we can't just have that and that everybody can't just have that. And that's just a matter of, you know, the healthcare system, just like with our experiences with getting what medicines we need or what surgeries we need, that kind of thing to help us be the people that we are. So yeah, it's definitely something that benefits, I have found. Unfortunately, it's just not available to all of us.
Thank you. Oh,
Go ahead. I think additionally, on top of just being trans, you know, I'm also Afro-Latinx, and so there's like a layer there of finding somebody who not only understands the transness of me, but also where I come from, how I grew up, you know, the communities in which I grew up. So that's something that people have to recognize as well when we're talking about mental health resources, is that yes, you may be able to give me a resource, but it's a resource that I'm going to be able to take advantage of fully. And that's on period.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, okay. We got a question back here from Faye, and then I got a question I'm going to ask because I talked to several people on the break, and so I've formulated one question based on several comments. There you go.
I have a question for Kendra. Did you ever get to ask your question that you wanted to ask before the break?
Yeah, we talked all about it. Yeah.
That was the fetish question.
Was that, the fetish question? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
What has been the most surprising part of your experience now compared to before you came out?
So what was the most surprising part about transitioning now versus before?
No, yeah. What has been the most surprising thing since you've transitioned for you personally?
So when I first came out, I was not a trans woman. I came out as a gay individual. So when I first came out, I was accepted. I was loved. A lot of people loved to be around me, wanted to invite me places, wanted to be where I was at doing what I was doing, even including my own mother. So my own mother was very supportive of me being my birth name, which is Zach, biologically as a boy. And that's the person who she holds so dearly to her heart because that's who she raised, that's who she birthed, that's the person who she feels like she's known her whole life. As I've transitioned, the most shocking thing for me is like the turnaround in the people in my life. My mom is one of my biggest supporters, but she's one of the people who have the hardest time accepting the fact that I'm trans. It's something that she's gonna always have to like stomach and deal with in her own way, and it's gonna take her some time. So that's like one of the biggest shocking things to me, is that a lot of people view us as trans, so they see us and they're like, oh, well, you're a different person compared to who you were before you transitioned. But in actuality, I was a different person then. I'm actually me now.
Very true.
There's actually a couple things that I found very surprising since transitioning. One was when I first actually came out at work, and my manager was like, "Oh, I know." I was like, "Excuse me, what?" And then we kind of circled back eventually, and I was like, "So you said you knew. When did you know exactly?" And it was like, "Well, I didn't actually know, but I had my suspicions." And I was like, "When?" And she said, "Well, when I interviewed you." And that was such a touching surprise, because it was like she had this suspicion. She was already fighting to be hiring a white children's librarian in a predominantly black neighborhood, and was getting pushback just from that alone. But the second thing I think that has been the most surprising is just within myself. I never expected to be the advocate that I am today. It was like one of those things where it's like, I just want to be me, you know, I just want to live my life. And then it was like, as I took those steps, then it was like, now I have to do this. I have to speak up. I have to kind of thing. And that all really surprised me, because I was never that way before, really. While I was an advocate, not to the level that I am now. That was a huge shock for me.
A big shock for me was how small my dating pool got. Yeah, it shrunk. And it's funny because, like, I am the most powerful and confident that I've ever been in my life. And it just feels like, you know, the people who were in my life before finding me sexually attractive, you know, they just, you know, it's just bizarre to be, you know, to think back to this unconfident person who wasn't, you know, living to their true potential, as opposed to now, you know, and everybody was trying to hook up, right? Like, you know, because I presented and you know, I was a female. And now it's like I'm way more confident, and because I'm non-binary, people are like, they just don't know what to do with that information. And so it's just been really difficult, to be honest. It is very lonely being trans sometimes. But I am not giving up hope that my queer love is out there somewhere.
Good. That's about.
I think after my initial coming out, my biggest surprise has been the level of family support and the increase in their desire to understand and know me and know more about me. When I came out at 15, I think, as a lesbian, I was then grounded for a month. And that was because I had lied about it for a year.
Wait a minute, say that again. It's because you what?
Had lied about it for a year.
Oh.
And when my girlfriend at the time and I had been pooling our money, because my parents were willing to pay for my prom ticket, so I paid for hers, and we were told that some of my friends' parents, so therefore my parents' friends, would be some of the chaperones, and my parents would find out if her and I danced together, just the two of us. So we found a way around that, of course. And then where the rest of my friends were going to one house for an after party before going on the big trip the next day, we had to come home, and she slept in the basement. I slept in my room on the second floor, and my mother slept in the living room on the couch. So that initial situation was not fantastic. But it was about a year and a half to 2 years after actually starting to see my therapist that I started talking to her about coming out my second time to my parents. And I decided that the best way for me to do that, just based on what I know about my parents, was going to be to write each of them a letter, leave it at their house when they were not there, leave, and let them read it on their own time, and then contact me on their own time. My mom and I had closed both letters saying basically, I am Both of my sisters already knew. My middle sister actually bought me this on my 1-year anniversary on testosterone. So they already knew. I had told my parents that they already knew. I said, whenever you want to sit down and have this conversation, I'm open to it. Just let me know. So my mom texted me that night and said, I love you always. I definitely want to sit down and, talk about it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. My dad's response was, hey, can you look up this thing on Amazon and order me a 4-pack of it? And my Amazon Prime isn't working. And I was like, sure. But in my dad's speak, that was, hey, I love you, thank you for telling me. Like, that was how that went. I think they both surprised me a lot, but for different reasons. But so my dad has been the one to be very adamant about his 6 brothers and sisters and his mother referring to me in male pronouns. That's not to say he doesn't slip up sometimes, but that's fine. They raised me for 25 years as their daughter, so like whatever. But he has also come between me and some of his brothers and sisters and mother at different times to stand in my defense for one reason or another. So the increase in their support, which to me feels like it's been very quick, but I'm sure to them it has felt like these 16 years that it has been, has just been amazing for me, and I am extremely grateful for that.
I'm just most of the time I'm always surprised about how little is taught about hormone replacement therapy and what it does to the body. And specifically when we speak about trans athletes, that conversation I would fight a million times forever. And yeah, I'm just surprised that people know so little about what it does to the body. When someone does testosterone, it works a lot faster than estrogen. A trans male can pass within a year. You wouldn't even know. Estrogen is more of a slow burn, but it absolutely burns. Like when I first started hormones, I feel like I had every period in my lifetime all at once. Every single one that I had ever missed in my life as the opportunity to be a woman, I think I had within the first week of doing HRT. But yeah, it really does. It affects the body. And I think if you guys are interested, you really should do your own research online. I'm not a doctor, but there are some lovely resources that'll tell you how estrogen and testosterone affects the body, especially in hormone replacement therapy. So.
For me, I think there's a lot of things. But I think I would say what surprised me is how difficult it is if you're not super masculine to kind of, like, as a trans man, say, I'm not like that and I don't want to be like that. In the time that I came out, and I'm I grew up rural, so in small towns, so that also is context that's important. Being I dress masculine and whatnot, but I'm pretty campy gay, and it was really hard to be able to embrace that and be okay with it, because it was treated so badly. And like, are you really trans? I got that so many times of, well, are you really trans? Like, are you sure you're not just like a lesbian or something? And fighting against all of those expectations. And honestly, straight up, like, the people who've kind of liberated me from that shit are my non-binary and gender fluid and genderqueer friends. Because so many of them are just like, you know what, I'm done with this. I don't want to live this way. And they're like, Anthony, you don't have to live that way either. You don't have to be, have that yoke on you and be smothered by it anymore. And that even went to me growing out my hair. Like, that seems like nothing to other people, But, you know, when I came out in all these years, if I had grown out my hair at all, everybody said, are you going back to transitioning to being a woman again? And that really messed me up for a long time. And then I decided, you know, last year, with the help of, you know, my non-binary friends, that I wasn't going to live the way everybody wanted me to live as a trans person anymore, and I was going to do it my way. And it's been a year of hair growth now, and it's just going to keep getting longer. So moving here, I can finally just be my fully campy self and feel free in my own way of masculinity.
I think for me, I realize that cishet white men get whatever they want the first time they ask, including respect. I have worked primarily in male-driven and predominantly male industries for the past several years. And when I started my transition, I was working for a subcontractor for the railroad. And we drove the conductors and the engineers all over the tri-state area. So the changes were so drastic and so fast, especially if I had never seen these guys before, because we had a lot of regulars that we would see sometimes every day. But once my voice started dropping and my beard started growing and I was starting to pass, the attitudes that these guys would have when they got in my van was night and day different. When they perceived me as a butch lesbian, I didn't know anything that I was talking about. They wanted to give me all the directions to get from anywhere from Indianapolis to back to the rail yard that I worked at every single day. Like, I spent 60 hours a week at that rail yard, and I grew up in Indianapolis, and you are from Kentucky and trying to give me directions. Why? That stopped as soon as they perceived me male. And as much as I hate that and I don't want it, I think it's an important thing that we need to talk about, because without me or Josh or anybody else that is perceived as a white man calling out other white men, it's never going to change.
Amen. Okay, I know we are at 8 o'clock, but I do have one final question that I want to ask, because it's something that I've had a lot of people ask me about. I'd be like, how this, how that, I don't understand. And so I feel like we would be remiss if we skipped this before closing, okay? So the question, it's a two-part question. So the first part of the question is, as a trans person, and when you started to question or figure out your true gender identity, did that also call into question your sexuality, and how much of an internal battle struggle between the two of those things did you have? And then the second part of the question is that, let's just be honest. I told you we could say anything, right? So there are some people that just like to eat pussy, and some people who just like to suck dick, okay?
Oh my God.
So,
you cannot say that on camera.
Hello, YouTube. So this is my question. As a trans person, there might be someone that is attracted to you because they think you have certain body parts, and you don't, but that's what they really like to put in their mouth. So my question is, what is a polite way, maybe, to broach that with you before things go too far?
Okay, well,
Does that make sense?
Well, I was going to answer this question, but now I don't want to. All right, who wants to answer first? All right.
Or does nobody want to answer?
I will say, though.
Go down Everybody's got an answer.
I will say, though, that I did come out 4 different times. I came out as bisexual, I came out as lesbian, then I came out as trans, and I think lately I just came out like I'm every color of the rainbow. I'm just all around queer.
You swim in it?
I'm just doing my thing, going with the flow. So, yes.
So I was in a very happy and committed relationship with my wife when I started transitioning, but I will say that having hormones does make you, it opens your eyes. It opens your eyes to the different possibilities, and sexuality and what you may or may not like or be attracted to opens up, and it becomes more fluid, for me anyway. as far as your second question, I would think that if by the time you got to the point where pants are going to be taken off and mouths are going to be involved in what's under those pants, that you would have already had this discussion and already be kind of friendly enough with this, hopefully friendly enough with this person that you're like, hey, you know, I'm trans and that means this, this, and this for me because I have had this procedure or have not had whatever. I don't know. I think for me, if I were dating somebody, I would want them to like just politely ask, but not try to, I don't know, come out as bluntly as you did with it, because that could make somebody feel kind of uncomfortable.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I just don't know how else to say it, and so.
It won't make the three of us uncomfortable. We're used
Just
to
a
you.
little uncomfortable. I just want to say hi, Mom.
Oh yeah, I forgot there were parents
And
watching.
hi, Josh's mom
Yes.
and dad.
Hello, mother-in-law, and your parents-in-law. Yes.
For the first question, so I came out, or I figured out my sexuality first as queer or bisexual, and it's in the program, but I was reading the book Divergent, and that's how I came across all other kinds of queer, even though they're not present in the book. But one of the characters is talking about how he wants to be a little bit of all of the different factions. And so I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. And so because I had already gone through the work with sexuality, just being attracted to people, just being a people didn't really affect that. I know that when Josh and I first met, so we met online. I thought I was meeting a cute blonde girl, and it was just a dude on the internet.
Catfished her.
One of the things that he and I talked about at the beginning was whether or not it would affect our relationship, if he was transitioning. And again, because I had already identified as queer, I was attracted to men, women, non-binary, just people in general. You know, I was attracted to him for the nerd that he is, not because of his gender. So.
I'm not a nerd.
And I'm not addressing the second question.
Thank you. Let's not address the second question.
Yeah, so for me, sexuality has been really hard. So when I came out, well, I guess when I was younger, I thought I was straight. Cisgender woman, gross. I'm not. But I thought it.
Gross.
For me.
Okay.
For me. Talking about myself. I promise, nobody else. And then when I came out, I was like, oh, you know, I think I'm bisexual, you know, and so I dated men and women, not very often, because I've had terrible luck with dating, just to be blunt. It's just been bad. I have a terrible track record. And, you know, and I'd realized it was actually the past year. It's been a tremendous struggle for me. I realized the only reason I was interested in women was because women tend to be nicer to me, and there would be a level of safety if I looked straight. And it made me very sad that I figured that out, because I had dated a woman for a little bit, and I hadn't figured it out I figured it out as I was dating her, and so I had to talk to her and, you know, tell her I was gay. And then I came out of the closet again for many things, as many of us have. Just the last 2 months, I've been out as myself as gay. And, you know, I would be a liar if I said I wasn't devastated by that for a long time, as I figured that out of, you know, the realization of my dating opportunities are even lower than they were and things like that. But at the same time, I feel so much better, because it's I know who I am now, I know what I like, and now I'm not gonna try to tell myself, I'll just be thankful for what I can get, you know, or I'm gonna try to be safe. I'm no, I'm just me now, and this is just how it's gonna be, and I felt a lot better just being myself. So I'm relieved for that, but it's taken me a long time to get here. And then in terms of like, I call it genital preference. If we want to use more like, I don't know, PC words, though, I'm more like you, and I mean, I've sworn multiple times today. That tells you, you know, kind of similar ministers in some ways, right?
Yeah. Genital preference, I like that.
Genital preference, yeah.
I'll add that to my vocabulary.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I just tell people, like, if, you know, I say from the beginning, even on, like, regular dating apps, I've said, like, I'm not having bottom surgery, I'm trans, because that takes care of the problem. And then sometimes I'll ask I'll be talking to somebody, I'm like, did you read my profile? And then they'll go read it, and then they won't talk to me anymore, or something. But that gets that right out of the way. And for me, it's just like, as long as they're a man, it doesn't matter. But they have to be a man, otherwise I'm not interested.
I like to joke with my trans girlfriends that I'm an ex-homosexual. It's true. I consider myself to be straight, but I'm a trans woman. And as far as like how you posed that question to me sounded like, how do you have the conversation? And to me, what it seems like is it's consent. You know, when you consent to being with your partner, you are consenting to sucking dick or eating ass or stuff like that. So.
Ooh, I left that one out.
So that. So that kind of that covers that one. But yeah, I'm an ex-homosexual, and consent is mandatory. So.
I'm also gonna start by saying hello to my mother. And so to also start off, I have never believed at any point in my life that anybody is 100% either direction as far as their love interest or who they were attracted to went. That being said, the actual first time I came out was as bi 50-50 in about 7th grade. Then it moved, I think about my sophomore year, to still bi, but like 99-1. I really strongly prefer women. And then it was, well, now I'm kind of genderqueer and still bi, still mostly into women, so I guess that makes me mostly straight, but also kind of not. And then when I started identifying as male, then it became, well, now I'm 99% straight. So I consider my current relationship of 3 years now to be my first actual boyfriend. And I am the first person that he has dated that was, or that is female-bodied. And neither of us has had any complaints. So I think as far as getting to that point, we did have a lot of conversations about it. There were things that both of us had never done. So it did take a lot of conversations that lasted months, actually, before anything else happened. I never had to have that conversation with any girl that I was dating. I did have the girl that I was dating at the time that I started identifying as male have a full anxiety mental spiral of trying to figure out what that meant her identity was, which was mildly offensive but also understood, because I feel like realizing a different sexual identity is a slightly bigger step than realizing a different gender identity is a slightly bigger step than a sexual interest identity. Not by much, especially depending on where you live. But she didn't, the minute I told her that I think I identify as male, her first question was, well, what does that make me? It was not, okay, how can I support you, or like anything like that. It was, well, so what am I now? I don't know. You tell me, you dumbass. Like, what? I can't tell you what you are. I am telling you what I am. But I've had no relationship since that one, and that was the last relationship I was in with a female before starting T. I had a lot more after starting T. And then the last 3 years have been, with my first actual boyfriend, and we've been good ever since.
Who is amazing?
He's all right.
Can you reiterate the question one more time, just so I can
Really? Are you being serious? Okay.
Yeah, I'm for
So,
real.
as you were going through your transition and figuring out your gender identity, did that call into question your sexual identity? Was there a struggle or a conflict with that you struggled with internally? And then the second part of the question was, there are people who like to eat pussy, suck dick, and eat ass, and they have their preference. Right. And so if they know what their preference is, but they aren't really sure maybe what you have going on underneath, like what would be a safe, polite way to say, well, I really prefer ass. I'm just using that because you all have an ass, over this. So, yeah, how does that work? Okay. And I apologize if that's an offensive question. But I do think it's something that people wonder.
Yeah. So when I first came out, I came out when I was 19. I was not a trans woman. I was a gay boy. But I always liked men. I had a girlfriend before. I was like head over heels with her, in love with her. But we never ever sexually had sex. I only had sex with a woman one time, and I didn't enjoy it. So I've always been just into men the whole time. So my sexual identity never changed even when I became a trans girl. My sexual position had to change. So basically, when I first came out, I was like a power bottom. So like I just specifically liked like taking and not giving. Then I got in a relationship, so it kind of changed. Like he was like a gay individual, he's a gay boy, I was a gay boy still. So we kind of like became more like in tune with each other. Like he said, like we hadn't did certain things for the first time together. So we did them together, and there was no complaints. It was cool. So now, as I live my life as a trans woman, if I'm just meeting somebody and like we're just getting to know each other and we're hooking up, I'm definitely going to be like more of like the girl in the situation. So most men already know that. They already know like I'm not going to be like doing like all the extra stuff. Now, when I'm in a relationship with somebody, I'm very versatile because I very much believe in being vulnerable with your partner. It's the only way you'll ever work. Anything will ever last you, vulnerability. So with my partner, even though he does give very much like street thug on the corner, I definitely beat his block down sometimes, and that is okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'd also like to clarify that my question isn't so much about, opposite genders, right, as much as like same genders. So for example, if another woman came up to you and was hitting on you, well, you wouldn't be interested. Hold on, let me find somebody who would be interested. There we go, okay. Let me find the interested parties.
It's not that I'd be interested. Like, I'm very like, I think women are beautiful. I have 6 sisters. I grew up in a house full of women, so like, I feel like women are beautiful. When I go out with my...
I wasn't trying to say you think you're gross.
I know.
I just know that that's not where you're...
I would probably tell the woman specifically, like, I'm just not interested in, like, women. I like to play around with women a lot, so sometimes, like, I do get, like, flirty with them, but most of the time when they ask, I'm just kind of like, girl, I'm not no lesbian. Like, just little stuff like that. Like, just a way to make it, like, not so, like... Because women, like... I feel people who don't live in the gay community, they don't know how to ask those questions because they don't want to offend anybody. Everything is considered offensive or discrimination. So in that moment, I try to give them a little bit of jokingly behind it, like, oh, I'm not no lesbian or whatever, just so like they still don't feel like they're like getting decimated for asking a question that literally could just be answered simply.
Mm-hmm. Right, so like with that, if somebody were to ask you, like how would... If you were dating somebody new, obviously you're in a committed relationship, like if you were dating somebody and they wanted to know if you've had bottom surgery or something like that, how would you want them to approach you about it?
Just ask asking me to have a vagina or a pee-pee. I'm a lot different than a lot of trans individuals. I did not grow up around a community. I did not grow up around a lot of different things. So for me, I live a straightforward life. I'm very open with my transition. I love being a trans woman. People see me, they know what I have. So I just feel like instead of like beating around the bush for the discriminatory or negative comments, I just give them the answer instead of them feeling like they have to like search and Google fact away asking me a question that's so simple.
And that's one of the things that is a common misconception, is that trans people are trying to trick you into, doing whatever. And it's like, no, it says clearly on my dating profile that I am AFAB, non-binary. I was born with a vagina, take it or leave it, you know what I mean? And so for me, it has changed. I thought I was straight, then I thought I was lesbian, I thought I was bi, as I've, just had different experiences, I've definitely, I love queer people and I love queer love. I don't trust cis het men, and I don't want to be with them unless I'm topping them and unless I'm getting paid for it. So, and it just is what it is, you know what I mean? And so I think as far as, asking those questions, I feel like a lot of it is intent. Are you genuinely curious because you want to just know? Are you being nosy, or do you genuinely want to know because you want to pursue something and you don't want to waste either of our times? You know what I mean? And so I feel like the intent needs to be there. Are you trying to harm me, or are you just trying to really get to know me? So that's, my stance on that is that we're not all trying to trick anybody. Like, we actually are just trying to live our lives and just
And I think that's a very good distinction, and I'm glad you made it, that it's not about that there are people that just genuinely don't want to waste your time or their time. Like,
People want a ticket to the freak show.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
And that goes back to the fetishizing and everything else as well.
And also, you're allowed to like what you like. You know what I mean? If you want to be with a non-binary person who has a penis because that's what you like, you are allowed to do that. If you want to be with a trans man, you're allowed to do that. You know what I mean? And I feel like people just really, I understand that a lot of people don't understand this new culture shift. They don't get it because they are it's not easy to understand. Nobody's asking you to be an expert in this. We're not even experts in this half the time. You know what I mean? It is very hard to keep up with all of it all the time. You have to show yourself grace. You have to try. And like I said, the intent needs to be there. As long as you're not trying to harm anybody, I think if you ask anybody on this panel, like you did, if they prefer they than being misgendered, they say, yes, we're understanding individuals, you know what I mean? And if you slip up, it's okay. And if you ask hard questions, it is okay. You just need to be genuine and honest with yourself and the people that you're engaging with.
And you also need to be willing to accept the fact that not everybody wants to answer those hard questions. Some of us will. We'll show up for a panel. My identity, I knew very little that I was a girl. My attraction had always been towards both genders, and then I discovered the blurring lines of genders, and so language changed over my life that most of these people weren't born then, which makes me feel very old. But bisexuality was like, you were bisexual, you were gay, or you were lesbian, and that was it. And everybody thought that the bisexuals just hadn't made up their mind, or we were greedy. And it wasn't only really until very recently that pansexual became more common and sort of thing. And it was like, oh, okay, well that fits me because you could pick just two genders, but I don't. you know, so like it never changed for me. My who I thought of as myself and my attraction, those never really shifted. It was just a matter of how open was I and how much of that was I willing to share with the people around me. When it comes to when people start to engage with me in conversation and things like that, I tend to tell them pretty much up front, just so you know, I'm not like most girls. And that will be like, well, what do you mean? I'll be like, well, I don't necessarily have the same parts as most girls. And I just pretty much base it like that. It's fairly simple, and it either weeds them out and they just stop talking because now they know I'm trans, or then there come all the questions about parts, and then we shift into then the chasers and things like that, and then it's like, then there has to be a whole discussion of like, look, it's not like it is like you see in porn, because I'm on hormone therapy, things work a whole lot different, and some things don't work when you start stuff like that, and it causes changes in how your body reacts and all of this. It's a completely different format, even though the parts might look similar. So that's how
Oh, I think Taylor was.
And hello to all my patrons.
I did just want to add one thing to the second part of that question, because I know all of us semi-answered it, but I think you were the only one that actually answered it, maybe. The times that I have been asked, like, well, what parts do you have? I will very happily tell them both, because I have this wonderful prosthetic that I am more than happy to not in church, but whip out and show them, or show them online what it looks like, and then proceed to tell them all the things that it does for me. I can pack with it, I can pee with it, I can take it off when I don't feel like wearing it, and I can also have sex with it. So I am more than happy to just tell people that. That's really in specific circles, but there's also only really specific circles of people that are asking me that question. But yeah, I have more than once in the back room at a drag show pulled it out for different queens that are genuinely wanting to know how that process works. Me and my trans brother have the exact same model, and we like to joke about that.
You're
so yeah, I can do both. I'm really only gonna get so much of a reaction if you decide to go down on me while I'm wearing my prosthetic. I'll feel something, but it's not gonna be enough to, like, make me really enjoy it. But that's typically, yeah, if somebody is asking, or if it's somebody that, like, previously when I was talking like to on a dating app, or somebody that I was prospectively talking to in any way, then yeah, that's what I answered. I said both, and I said I can do what you are more into and what you prefer, and probably you're gonna like it. Probably.
And also, those prosthetics are really expensive, so I totally get the idea of just swapping it out, because you pay good money for those.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I was going to say, we went way over time, and so I really, really appreciate the extra time that you gave us for that last question, because I do feel like it was probably not the most important question. It was one of the most entertaining questions to ask. And so, again, I thank you for your bravery and your transparency and your willingness to share your experience, because it's only through education and normalizing transgender people and normalizing non-binary people and not making it something that's other. It's the only way we're going to grow, and we're going to come together, and we're going to start to see everybody as equals. And, well, don't even get me started on that. I wanted to get into the whole Roe v. Wade and how that affects the trans community and some other things, but we just didn't have time. So maybe we'll just make this a yearly thing so that we can come back and revisit this every year. So it looks like the panel is happy with that. So that makes me very, very happy. Can we all give our panel a big round of applause? I really, really cannot thank you enough. I think WTHR 6, I think they left too early. I think that if they had stayed to the end, they could have gotten some really good footage for the 11 o'clock news, but, you know, that's on them. On that final note, I am going to draw for the final door prize. We've got a pride flag t-shirt and
You only need one mic.
bumper sticker. Well, because I don't think this was on.
It is on.
It is on? Oh. I just like to be loud.
I know.
Yes, I can hear myself now. Maisley?
We got a Maisley.
There is, okay, Marley. I'm not going to argue with you about what your name is. What is your t-shirt size? That's M-A-S. Okay. What did you say, Laura? Okay, sorry, yeah. There you go, trans flag sticker, there you go. Thank you again, everyone, for coming out. You are always, always, always welcome to join us on Thursday nights. Same goes for you all. Thursday nights, the first Thursday of the month, which will be next week, is the table. And so all you get to do is sit around and eat free food and talk to people and share in community. I don't know. Ames is a chef. Ames makes the food. What do you guys want to eat next week? All right, we'll start a Facebook poll. Tell Ames, Chef Ames, what to cook. So again, thank you so much. I usually send us out with a blessing of some sort. So to the awesome triune God who is male, female, intersex, and transgender, we thank you for the courage and strength that was shown in this room tonight, and we pray that we can go out and be vessels of love and education and hope for not just the trans community, but the LGBTQ community and the community at large, because things are really effed up out there. So go, be gone, we're done.
Go, be gone, we're done. Thank you so much for coming out, ladies and gentlemen.
Pay to watch it back later. Oh, I'm sorry.
Back of your program to make a donation. Yes, I'll make sure your mom's taken care of.